Welcome back to Max and Stacy Report. I'm Max Keiser. Time now to turn to a very special guest, Simon Dixon of BnkToTheFuture.com. Simon, nice to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you again. Happy to be on the new show.
Right, Simon, it's been an awfully eventful past few months as the Terra Luna UST collapse triggered a wave of liquidations across the shitcoin market, and many hedge funds and Ponzi's imploded along with the liquidations. What are your big takeaways on the aftermath?
So this is our Lehman Brothers of a crypto moment. It showed that there's systemic risk by adding layers and layers and layers on top of this industry. And so really the big takeaways are as follows, that there was a collateralized lending market that was created, and there were stable coins that were created. Really, we have seen that pristine collateral is very, very important. And so when lots and lots of these coins have been backed by Bitcoin, so there was a stable coin that was backed by Bitcoin. We've seen that if you don't have a stable coin backed by dollars, that becomes important because you can no longer maintain the peg when you have the volatility of Bitcoin. And when you have other collateralized loans that are essentially backed by unlicensed, unregulated securities with zero liquidity, then when hedge funds start messing around with those things, those that need to liquidate their positions take down the price of the pristine collateral, and you end up with a systemic risk event where financial institutions implode, and you have to unwind all the event, and then you end up with an opportunity to buy some cheap Bitcoin at the bottom. And we rewind the cycle and move into our next cycle in Bitcoin.
Oh boy, we get to relive the Lehman Brothers moment. How great. Hey, Bitcoin was collateral for all these failed yield farming schemes. So the liquidations have seen massive sell-offs in Bitcoin prices as well. Have we hit bottom? More liquidations to come. Simon?
There's a few more systemically risky events. So there's lots of restructuring going on right now. There's lots of bankruptcies. There's still a bit more to unwind in this market until we can stabilize to some normality. So Bitcoin was the collateral behind some of these things. And so there may be one more shakeout till we can start to look at the next cycle and move forward. Or depending on the outcome of those, we may not get any more liquidations in where they have to sell their Bitcoin in order to save some of these unlicensed, unregistered, unlicensed banks and securities businesses.
Well, individuals are free to choose whether or not to get wrecked on these obvious Ponzi schemes. These same DeFi projects, and now the latest thing, the metaverse, have descended upon places like El Salvador, and wherever Bitcoin is adopted. Should nation states try these schemes, Simon? Can they bring jobs and innovation, at least until they implode? Your thoughts?
Absolutely not. The future of a country should never be gambled upon. If an individual wants to gamble and go lower down the risk curve. But at this stage, the furthest you can go is looking at either doing a central bank digital currency, which has a new name, which is communism on a blockchain, if you want to pursue that way of organizing your economy. Or the alternative is looking at the financial innovation on top of pristine collateral like Bitcoin, if you want to pursue a more Austrian freedom-orientated way of organizing your economy. Those two innovations will prevail, and those two innovations will determine the trajectory of the level of freedom that you have for your citizens in your country. Everything else is leave that to the gambling, and the future of a country should never take that types of risks because it has catastrophic implications for the citizens and the individuals that live in that country.
If I may digress for a second, Simon Dixon, of course, you came out with a book in 2010 called Bank to the Future. It was the first book to mention Bitcoin. I heard you're writing a new book. Is that still in the works, and when might we see that?
Yeah, before the industry needed some help, I was 200,000 words into writing my new book on following the money over the last 5,000 years in order to unearth many of the wars, pandemics, the financial flows to help people put a forecast for the next decade so that individuals, companies, and countries can use Bitcoin in order to take a percentage of their country or their company or their individual retirement plans and take advantage of the future of money as we move into what I was forecasting a while back, these different monetary renegotiations that the world is going to be experiencing as a result of much of the geopolitics today.
Right, sounds good. Okay, well, back to the subject at hand. Central African Republic, or CAR, announced a Bitcoin law in April. By July, they were introducing Sango Coin, thanks to Sam Bankman-Fried and Brian Armstrong. Do you think Sango Coin will help CAR? How do you compare the future for CAR under a shitcoin standard to El Salvador under a Bitcoin standard?
Well, obviously, the Bitcoin standard is the only thing that, this is meant to be digital hard sound money. We got into Bitcoin because we wanted to prevent money printing. And then everyone creates new money printing as the short-term option. But that's the fiat model. And if people want to follow the fiat model, then they can destroy their economy, which unfortunately will have catastrophic consequences for those that are impoverished by the fiat currency system. It's unethical, it's immoral, it should not be pushed forward. And anybody that is advising a country to engage in such practices, really think about some of the ethics behind that. Because these are countries that have been really, really affected by the fiat monetary system and need hard money in order to reverse the fact that they were robbed in Africa by the British government and colonialism of their gold and silver in the past by printing agrabeads and all sorts of things that caused the slavery industry. People need to look at their monetary history when messing around with these things. So if some teenager became a billionaire through messing with cryptocurrencies, do not inflict that upon countries. We've got to have a higher standard than that. Hard money is what these countries need, not more money printing. That's what they've already had and has already destroyed their currencies and has already led to poverty and catastrophic results. I deploy the industry to have a higher standard.
Right, you mentioned communism on a blockchain. This sounds like colonialism on a blockchain.
This is money printing. This is tribes centered around things. Bitcoin was hard enough to create. To have to think that someone else can come along and create these coins that are going to make a difference in their country, it's just it's not going to work. It's going to have disastrous consequences. We've seen all this before. Iceland tried to do it with Aurora coin, and how many times do we need to go through these cycles for people to learn that we've already done this? It never works, and Bitcoin ends up in the end.
Simon, in September, it will be a year since El Salvador adopted Bitcoin. What do you think so far of what you've seen? With the Bitcoin down from 60,000 to around 20,000 when we're speaking, what are your thoughts on whether or not it is now a good time to issue a Bitcoin bond?
Yeah, so the Volcano Bonds is an exciting project. I think it was right to delay that project given the current environment. This is the right time for El Salvador, from my perspective, to be doing exactly what they're doing, which is accumulating their stack, dollar cost averaging down into the bear market, and playing a longer game. We've seen this so many times. The wealth that we've seen generated in this market is when everyone's saying that Bitcoin's dead, Bitcoin's a scam, you're an idiot, you bought it, look at that. And that's when the wealth is created. And then everyone looks like geniuses during the next bull markets as we enter into the next cycle. In the next cycle, I do believe that El Salvador is perfectly positioned in order to take some of their new laws and new regulations, slow down a little bit, and let's rebuild the financial markets and leapfrog based upon Bitcoin as collateral and have bonds and various other securities markets, because I believe that is the source of the next cycle. We're going to have to go through a building phase, and the countries, if Latin America or other countries and El Salvador can position themselves ready for that, I believe that we've got a David beats Goliath leapfrog moment that everyone's going to mock. And because the Bitcoin market's crashing, those are the times when everybody looks at them and says, you're an idiot, and you get the opportunity to leapfrog them when everyone tries to catch up during the bull market.
On February 26th of this year, the U.S. froze $630 billion of Russia's reserves. Now, does this change the game for Bitcoin and individuals, companies, and nation states that hold it, Simon?
Yeah, so the dollar has been through several monetary renegotiations. I call this the fifth monetary renegotiation. The first one was in 1910 when we were on a gold standard and a bunch of bankers met on Jekyll Island to design the financial system to support JP Morgan, who was bailing out because there was no lender of last resort. And very similar to today, where FTX and Sam is bailing out the industry following the JP Morgan strategy. That was monetary renegotiation one, where the whole fiat-based Ponzi scheme was designed. The second one was designed after World War I in 1919, where US really became the winner because it was funding much of the war. But it wasn't actually affected by the war. And so it built the strongest economy. And the Paris Treaty, the Treaty of Versailles, essentially took all of the debt of the losing countries from the war, and it was owed to the US. And it moved into the second phase of the gold standard, but also had the Federal Reserve fiat money printing system built on top. The third monetary renegotiation was designed by John Maynard Keynes, that wanted to create a shitcoin called Bancor. And instead, the US managed to remove everybody from the gold standard and get everybody to build their central bank currencies on top of the dollar, based upon the promise that the US dollar would be convertible to gold. The fourth monetary renegotiation happened in 1973. Or 1971, I think it was first talked about, when President Nixon decided to remove that. And therefore, we had the ginormous, massive money printing that we're experiencing right now. The final monetary renegotiation, let's call it monetary renegotiation 5, is when the Federal Reserve decided that dollars by central banks are no longer dollars if you do not play by our rules. Which means that China, other countries in Latin America that may have been shafted by economic hitmen at the IMF, now know that you can't own that money, you can't spend that money, and it certainly doesn't have a fixed supply, causing hyperinflation in their economies, which leads us to the end of a debt cycle and the positioning for Latin America to really rebuild their economy, competing rather than taking those China Belt and Road loans or those IMF economic hitman loans. They can rebuild based upon Bitcoin digital hard sound money, while everyone else is focused on central bank digital currencies.
Simon Dixon of Bank to the Future, thanks so much for being on Max and Stacy Report.
Thanks for having me.
All right, and that's going to do it for this edition of Max and Stacy Report with me, Max Keiser, and Stacy Herbert, coming to you from El Salvador, land of the free, home of the Bitcoin. Until next time, bye, y'all.